There comes a day when every woman who once took a good man for granted feels the silence she created. No messages to reply to, no calls to ignore, no more presents to push away. It's that moment when she realizes the man who once made her feel safe, wanted, and adored has finally stopped trying. At first, she'll tell herself she's fine. She'll scroll through social media pretending she's unbothered. But late at night, when her phone stays silent, that's when it hits her. He's really gone. That steady energy she used to mock, she misses it now. That calm presence she once found boring, she craves it. And that man she thought would always chase, he's moved on. That's the exact moment when reality hits harder than heartbreak itself. Let's break down what happens inside her mind step by step. 1. The power shift. When a woman loses a good man, the first emotion that creeps in isn't heartbreak, it's disbelief. She doesn't accept it right away because, in her mind, he was always supposed to be there. He was the stable one, the patient one, the man who tolerated her moods, listened when she was silent, and stayed when others would have walked away. She got used to that. His loyalty became so predictable that she mistook it for weakness. She thought no matter what she said or did, he'd always be waiting at the end of every argument. But one day, he stopped. He didn't block her, he didn't lash out, and he just quietly withdrew. And that silence cut deeper than any words ever could. That's the moment when the balance of power shifts. At first, she brushes it off. She tells herself he's just busy or that he's playing some emotional game. But deep down, she knows this is different. His energy has changed. He's not chasing. He's not checking in. He's not showing up the way he always did. And for the first time, she's the one wondering, the one overthinking, the one refreshing her phone just to see if his name appears. The tables have turned, and she hates the feeling. Not because she doesn't care, but because she finally understands what it feels like to lose something real. See, a good man's consistency becomes invisible over time. You stop noticing it because it's always there until one day it's gone. And when it's gone, you start realizing how rare it truly was. She remembers how he made things easier, how he calmed her storms instead of feeding them, how he showed up when others made excuses. Now she scrolls through her messages, seeing the history of his effort, the long texts, the reassurance, the patience. And suddenly, those messages hit differently. That's the power shift. When she realizes he no longer needs her validation, when she sees that the emotional control she thought she had was never really hers. It was his kindness that gave her the illusion of power. And now that he's gone, she's not just missing him. She's missing the version of herself that felt safe in his presence. Because once a good man stops caring, no amount of games, guilt, or nostalgia can bring him back. 2. The void he leaves behind. When a good man walks away, he doesn't just leave. He leaves silence. And that silence is louder than any argument they ever had. At first, she doesn't notice it. She fills her days with distractions, friends, parties, endless scrolling, even dating apps. But no matter how much she tries to drown it out, there's a space that no one else can fill. It's not just the absence of his voice, it's the absence of his energy, that calm, grounded, masculine energy that once made her feel secure without her even realizing it. When he was around, she never had to question where she stood. Now, every new connection feels uncertain, every conversation feels forced, and every smile feels like pretending. The truth is, a good man becomes part of a woman's emotional rhythm. His consistency sets the tempo of her life. His good morning texts, his way of checking in after a rough day, his subtle way of protecting her peace. And when that rhythm stops, it's like her world loses balance. She starts missing the smallest things: the sound of his laughter, the way he used to remember her favorite drink, the way he never made her feel like she had to compete for his attention. She realizes now that those small acts were never small. They were love in its purest form. She might try to replace him. Someone new, someone exciting, someone who gives her attention fast. But deep down, she compares every man to the one she lost. She compares their tone, their patience, their depth, and that's when she finally understands what she once called boring was actually peace. What she once took as too nice was maturity. What she thought she could find anywhere was something she may never find again. The void he leaves isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. It forces her to confront what she overlooked. She begins to realize that a good man's love isn't something you own, it's something you're entrusted with. And when you mishandle it, it doesn't come back the same. Because the moment a good man truly walks away, he takes not only his presence, but also the version of herself that she only became when she was with him. 3. The ego collapse. So, when the reality of losing a good man finally breaks through her defenses, the first thing that crumbles isn't her heart, it's her ego. For so long, her pride told her she was in control. She was the one who could decide when to pull away, when to give attention, when to test his patience. And he always passed those tests. Every time she pushed him away, he came back. Every time she went silent, he reached out. Every time she acted cold, he stayed warm. That cycle built her confidence, not in herself, but in the idea that no matter what, he'd never stop caring. But when the messages stopped coming and the warmth disappeared, her ego began to starve. The silence she once used as a weapon now feels like a punishment she can't escape. At first, she'll mask it with pride. She'll tell herself she doesn't care. She'll post pictures, write captions, and act unbothered. But the truth will start to leak through in private moments. When she sees something that reminds her of him, when she hears a song they used to play, when she passes by a place they once laughed together. Each memory is like a mirror reflecting how much she lost, and with every reflection, her ego shrinks a little more. That unshakable confidence she once had turns into quiet self-doubt. She begins to ask herself questions she never dared to before. Aha! Was I too harsh? Did I push too far? Did I lose the only man who truly saw me? The collapse of the ego is painful because it forces her to see herself honestly. She realizes that she confused his patience for weakness, his empathy for naivety, and his forgiveness for dependency. But he wasn't weak. He was strong enough to love her without losing himself, and even stronger to walk away when she stopped appreciating him. That realization cuts deep because it flips the narrative. She's no longer the one in control, she's the one left behind. And here's the cruel truth. The ego hates accountability, but the soul craves it. Once her pride dissolves, she begins to feel the full weight of her actions. The attention she once ignored becomes the silence she now dreads. The man she once took for granted becomes the standard she can't seem to replace. That's when she realizes she didn't lose him because he stopped loving her. She lost him because she made him feel unseen. 4. The flashbacks of what was. When the ego finally collapses, something else begins to take over. Memory. Not just casual remembrance, but vivid, emotional flashbacks that hit her at random times and refuse to fade. She'll be driving, hear a song, and suddenly she's right back in that car with him, laughing, teasing, holding hands at a red light. She'll walk past a restaurant and remember the way he looked at her across the table. She'll scroll through old photos and see not just images, but the small details she once overlooked. How he always leaned toward her, how he smiled even when she wasn't paying attention, how his eyes softened whenever she spoke. At first, she tries to brush it off, but the memories keep coming. Because when a good man leaves, his absence doesn't vanish, it echoes. Each memory becomes a reminder of the man she thought she'd always have. She starts realizing how much he did without her asking. The way he remembered her small habits, how he noticed her moods before she said a word, how he cared even when she made it difficult. These flashbacks are brutal because they aren't about grand gestures. They're about the quiet moments she never valued enough. The times he listened when she vented about her day. The nights he stayed up just to make sure she felt okay. The mornings he texted just to remind her she mattered. Those simple, consistent actions now feel like treasures she threw away without realizing their worth. She might try to suppress those memories, but they surface stronger when she's alone. Because nostalgia is cruel. It doesn't remind you of what went wrong. It reminds you of what was beautiful. And she starts to see that it wasn't the fights that mattered. It was the way he always tried to fix them. It wasn't the mistakes that defined him. It was his willingness to grow from them. In those moments, she doesn't just miss him. She misses how he made her feel grounded, understood, and safe. And that's the irony. The same man she once found too predictable now feels like the only person who ever truly understood her chaos. These flashbacks aren't just memories, they're lessons carved into her conscience. They remind her that consistency, effort, and emotional safety were never boring. They were love in its rarest form. 5. The uncomfortable realization. Eventually, the flashbacks stop feeling nostalgic. They start feeling haunting. That's when the uncomfortable realization sets in. She didn't just lose a man, she lost the man, the one who truly cared, not because of what she offered, but because of who she was. The one who saw her potential even when she was doubting herself. The one who stayed when others left and loved her even when she was hard to love. She begins to understand that good men are not common. They are quiet, rare, and often unappreciated until they're gone. This is the stage where guilt and regret start to weigh heavy on her chest. It's not about missing his presence anymore. It's about realizing the kind of love she may never experience again. She starts replaying moments where she could have done better, times she ignored his messages just to prove a point, the days she made him beg for affection, the nights she dismissed his feelings because she thought he'd never leave. But now he's not there to listen. No matter how much she wants to explain or apologize, he's already emotionally detached. And that's what makes this stage unbearable, knowing she still cares, but it no longer matters. He's already moved on in peace, while she's stuck reliving the emotional consequences of her own choices. The uncomfortable truth she faces is that she mistook emotional security for predictability. She thought excitement was in chaos, not realizing that real passion lives in peace. She craved the drama that made her feel wanted, not understanding that the calm he offered was a different kind of intensity, the kind built on respect and genuine care. Now she sees that love isn't about butterflies, it's about balance. And she had that until she destroyed it. Every time she meets someone new, she looks for that same stability, that same warmth, but it's never there. Because the kind of man she lost doesn't come around twice. He's the type who loves deeply once, and when it's over, he never looks back. That realization burns. It's the moment she stops blaming him and starts confronting herself. The moment she finally admits she lost not because he gave up too early, but because she realized too late that he was the only one who ever loved her right. 6. When reality hits hard. There comes a night, quiet, lonely, and heavier than usual, when everything finally sinks in. It's no longer about what could have been or what might happen if she reaches out. It's about facing the truth. He's really gone, not just physically, but emotionally. That's when reality hits harder than heartbreak. She scrolls through her old messages, her chest tightening as she reads his words, the affection, the reassurance, the effort. She realizes that every message she once ignored was an opportunity to keep him close. Every time she dismissed his concern was a brick removed from the foundation of what they built. And now, that foundation has completely crumbled. The hardest part isn't that he left, and it's that he's doing fine without her. When she sees him happy, peaceful, or simply unbothered, it stings in a way she can't describe. Because for the first time, she realizes he wasn't dependent on her. She was dependent on his stability. His calmness, his maturity, his emotional grounding, those were the things that held her world together without her knowing. And now, seeing him move on so effortlessly makes her confront the truth she's been avoiding. He was the real prize. While she thought she had options, he was the rare one, the kind of man who loves with intention, not convenience. Reality also hits when she tries to fill the void. She talks to new men, hoping someone will give her the same feeling. But every interaction feels hollow. The laughter doesn't feel real, the connection doesn't feel deep, and the energy doesn't feel safe. She realizes she can't replicate what she lost, because connection built on games and validation will never replace a bond built on respect and trust. That's when the pain turns into reflection. She starts to understand that good men don't leave to punish. They leave to protect their peace. He didn't walk away to make her chase him. He walked away because he finally saw she wasn't meeting him halfway. That's when reality becomes clear. She wasn't the victim of his silence. She was the reason for it. And that truth, once accepted, hurts far more than the breakup ever did. because deep down, she knows. He was the one who would have stayed forever if only she had valued him in time. You said 7. The lesson. She'll never forget. After the storm settles, after the tears and the late night regrets, she enters the final stage, realization. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's the kind of understanding that doesn't come from pain anymore, but from wisdom. She finally understands what it means to lose a good man. Not just someone she dated, but someone who genuinely cared for her soul. This is the moment she begins to see what he was trying to teach her all along. That love isn't about control, it's about consistency. That loyalty isn't shown through promises, but through presence. And that good men don't beg to be seen. They walk away when they're not. That lesson becomes a scar she carries forever, invisible to others, but felt every time she meets someone new. As she grows, she starts to recognize his traits in others, the patience, the calmness, the honesty, and each time, it reminds her of him. But now she no longer looks with longing. She looks with respect. Because she knows she met a rare kind of man, the kind who showed her what genuine love feels like before she was ready to receive it. And that's the tragedy. Sometimes life gives us the right person at the wrong time, just to teach us what real love looks like. He was her mirror, showing her how to love selflessly, how to communicate without ego, how to nurture instead of test. She learned those lessons, but only after losing the teacher. Eventually, she stops waiting for him to come back. She realizes he's not a chapter she can reopen. He's a story that shaped her. That's the growth. Understanding that closure isn't about getting another chance, it's about becoming the kind of woman who would never lose a man like that again. And in that transformation lies her redemption, because the pain of losing him becomes the motivation to become better, more aware, more grateful, more emotionally mature. So when she finally looks back, it's no longer with tears, but with gratitude, because she knows that losing a good man was her greatest heartbreak and her greatest awakening. The moment she lost him was the moment she finally met herself, when regret turns into growth. In the end, every woman who loses a good man comes to the same realization. It was never about him being too nice, too soft, or too available. It was about her not being ready for the kind of love that required emotional maturity to keep. A good man doesn't love halfway. He gives fully his time, his patience, his loyalty, and his peace. But when that love is mishandled, he doesn't explode. He simply exits. And that's what makes his loss unforgettable. Because he doesn't leave chaos behind and he leaves clarity. The silence he leaves forces reflection. The emptiness he leaves demands accountability. And the absence of his energy becomes the mirror through which she finally sees herself clearly. She realizes that love isn't supposed to be tested, it's supposed to be appreciated. That peace isn't boring, it's priceless. That the kind of man who listens, understands, forgives, and still chooses you even after your flaws is the kind of man you build with, not play games with. By the time she understands that, he's already out there giving that same love to someone who values it. And that's when the regret transforms into the hardest lesson of her life. Not every man will love like that, not every heart will stay through storms, and not every opportunity for real love comes twice. But here's the deeper truth. The pain of losing him eventually becomes her growth. Because through that heartbreak, she learns what maturity looks like, what accountability feels like, and what genuine love actually means. It turns her into the kind of woman who no longer seeks validation, but connection. The kind who doesn't chase excitement, but peace. The kind who doesn't test love, but protects it. So yes, she lost a good man. But in doing so, she gained a better understanding of herself. And maybe that's how life works. Sometimes you have to lose what was pure to recognize what's real. And when that realization finally settles, she'll whisper the words she never got to say out loud. He didn't lose me. I lost him, and that's a mistake I'll never make again. And that's a